Ever been in, a group project or maybe at work where it just felt like one person had to sort of carry all the weight, making those big calls, dealing with tricky personalities, maybe being the one who gets the praise or, well, takes the heat.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
We often really simplify management, don't we? Just being the boss, telling people what to do.
Right. The classic view.
But as we're about to dig into in this deep dive, it's way more complex than that, much more impactful, and frankly, absolutely crucial. So today we're plunging into the world of management and leadership. We've pulled together some really great sources that look at what management really is, who managers are, what they actually, do day to day, and the different ways they approach getting things done.
And our mission here for you is pretty clear. We're not just going to read definitions. We're aiming to pull out the practical stuff, those nuggets of knowledge from these sources. The surprising bits, the core ideas that really define what makes management effective. This isn't just theory. It's about understanding the actual real-world impact managers have, helping you connect the dots quickly and deeply.
That's a really important distinction, yeah. So whether you're maybe thinking about stepping into a management role yourself, or you work with managers every day, or perhaps you're just curious about how successful organizations actually tick, well, this deep dive is designed to give you some genuinely valuable perspectives. And maybe, just maybe, an aha moment or two along the way. Okay, so let's start by unpacking a really common misconception about management. One of our sources kicks off with this great little dialogue between two students, Amir and Khalaf. They're thinking about their futures.
Ah, yes, that one.
And Khalaf, full of youthful ambition, he imagines joining the family business. He's excited to be the boss, get paid lots of money, and tell everybody what to do. Sounds pretty simple, almost like a dream job, right?
It's that first thought, isn't it? The fantasy version. But Amir jumps in pretty quickly with a reality check. He says, "It's not that simple, Khalaf." He points out that, yeah, the rewards might be good, but being the one in charge comes with great responsibility. It means making tough decisions, and, if things go wrong, it'll be your fault. And I think this is a really insightful point he makes. You have to inspire your team and command their respect to make ideas happen. You need to listen as well as instruct.
That really changes the picture.
Yeah, it totally does. It elevates it beyond just giving orders. So at its core, management is defined as the process of, accomplishing an organization's goals by using people and other resources effectively. And what often gets missed is that managers are, quite literally, responsible for whether a business succeeds or fails. They get the recognition when goals are met, sure, but they also bear the full weight of accountability when things don't pan out.
That read definition really puts a different spin on being the boss, doesn't it? It makes you wonder, if it's that complex, who actually, gets to carry all this responsibility?
Yeah.
Is it just the folks with CEO on their door?
Not at all.
Our sources make it super clear that it's pretty much anyone who makes things happen in a business, whatever its size. An entrepreneur working on a new startup idea, that's a manager. The top exec of a huge, multi-million rial business deciding on a new market, also a manager. Supervisors looking after a small team, VPs with hundreds reporting to them, they're all managers. It really shows how broad the role is. And for those of you thinking about your own careers, lots of people actually start out in business aiming to become a manager. They see it as a challenging way to make a real impact, to contribute to those big decisions. And what's really interesting is that you find these opportunities in every part of a business. Finance, marketing, IT, engineering, HR, it's like everywhere.
And it's fascinating how those responsibilities shift over time.
Yeah.
The typical career path, it often starts with a role like a team leader. Then, maybe after a few years, you get some experience. You might move up to supervisor or assistant manager. With more experience, maybe more education, you could then shift into mid-level or even top-level management. But what's really key here, I think, is that moving up isn't just about putting in the time. It's based on how well you actually perform those management duties and, crucially, your actual demonstrable contribution to the business's success. It's about impact.
Not just showing up.
Exactly.
So, okay, they've established management is way more than just bossing people around. It's about making things happen.
Yeah.
But how? What's the actual toolkit they use?
Our sources do a brilliant job distilling this down to 5 core actions, things that every manager does pretty much constantly, almost like the basic rules of getting stuff done.
Yeah, these 5 functions are really the foundation, the bedrock of managing effectively. And a key insight is just how linked they all are. So first, there's planning.
This is about analyzing information. setting goals, making decisions about what actually needs to be done. It's not just setting a fixed path. It's also about trying to anticipate bumps in the road, building some flexibility into the strategy.
Right, being adaptable.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Second, you've got organizing. This means figuring out and arranging the work and the resources you need to actually achieve the goals you set in planning. Think of it like building the machine to execute the plan. Third is staffing. This covers everything involved in getting, preparing, and compensating the people who work for the business. It's more than just hiring. It's about finding and nurturing the right talent.
People are key.
Absolutely. Fourth, there's directing, sometimes called implementing. This is the effort to actually lead and guide people to get the planned work done. This is where that leadership aspect really shines, inspiring the team. And finally, number 5 is controlling. This is all about figuring out how well the business is actually doing in achieving the goals it set way back in the planning stage.
Checking in.
Exactly. It's not just about catching errors. It's that continuous feedback loop. It lets you make adjustments in real time, keep things on track, and improve as you go.
That's a really clear framework: planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. But I mean, in the real world, does it always happen that neatly, one step after the other? Or is it more, messy?
Oh, definitely more messy.
The sources really stress that these 5 things aren't separate boxes. They're incredibly interconnected, constantly influencing each other. Successful businesses absolutely need managers who are good at all 5. They're constantly making decisions, solving problems that pop up, reacting to competitors, developing new strategies. And they have to do all that while keeping employees motivated and using resources smartly. It sounds like a nonstop juggling act.
It really is a dynamic balancing act, as you said. So you've got these 5 crucial functions always turning, but who's doing which parts and at what level? That's where the structure of management comes in. Most larger organizations, they have distinct levels for these responsibilities.
Okay, let's break that down. So at the ground level, the sort of first level of management, you have supervisors.
Right.
These are the people responsible for the day-to-day work of smaller teams. They're the ones helping plan the immediate work, keeping an eye on activities and results, making sure people have what they need, checking work quality, and solving problems as they come up. Supervisors spend most of their time actually implementing the plans that come down from above. And interestingly, they might even have some non-management tasks mixed in. Our sources give a great example here with a supervisor named Ahmed. He finds his job rewarding, but man, a typical day sounds intense. He might start by reviewing the production workflow, trying to find efficiencies. Then he's in a meeting about asking his team to work 10 hours of overtime each week for 2 months to hit a quota. You can imagine how that goes over.
Oof. Yeah. Tough conversation.
Then he also has to figure out how to cut expenses for the budget, even though he doesn't have the final say on it. And maybe the toughest part of his day, Ahmed has to terminate an employee's contract because they just haven't met expectations consistently. So, thinking about Ahmed's day, what would you, listening right now, find most enjoyable and maybe least enjoyable about his work? It really puts you in their shoes.
Moving up from supervisors, you get to middle management. Now, these folks are usually specialists. They're responsible for specific parts of a company like a marketing manager, an IT manager, maybe an HR manager.
Got it. Functional experts.
Exactly. They take the big business plan approved by the executives, and they develop specific plans for their own area. A big part of their job is coordinating with other middle managers to make sure everything lines up. Their time. It's mostly spent on those organizing, staffing, and directing functions we talked about. So a marketing manager isn't just dreaming up ads. They're constantly coordinating with sales, managing budgets, dealing with vendors.
Yeah.
A different kind of daily pressure.
And then right at the top, you have top management or executives.
The C-suite.
Right. These are the managers responsible for the direction and success of the entire company. They set the long-term vision, the big strategic plans, and they're the ones ultimately accountable for profitability. Their titles are usually CEO, president, COO, vice president, that sort of thing. They spend most of their time focused on planning and controlling activities. They're looking at global trends, analyzing the competition, approving all the major decisions and big expenditures.
Yeah, their challenge is often the sheer scale and the long-term impact of their choices. Decisions they make might not show results for years.
A lot of pressure there, too.
Definitely. And here's a really powerful insight from the sources related to this. It's not just that more business means more jobs overall. It specifically creates this huge demand for effective management. Take Saudi Arabia's Cultural Development Fund, for example. It's projected to create something like 70,000 new jobs in culture, entertainment, and sports.
Wow, 70,000.
Yeah. That's a massive number of opportunities, but it also means a staggering need for managers at every single level, supervisors, middle managers, executives, who can actually turn that potential into success. It really shows how management isn't just a job title. It's an engine for economic growth. And just briefly, on a related point, while we talk about these formal levels, the sources also mention personal responsibility. Even if you don't have a manager title, every employee really has a responsibility to do their own job well.
Makes sense.
And demonstrating that kind of ownership. That's often the first step towards getting more responsibility and maybe eventually landing a management role yourself.
Okay, so we've covered what managers do, where they fit. But managing actual people with all their different backgrounds, personalities, experiences, that sounds incredibly hard.
It is. It's probably the hardest part.
Which brings us to a really critical idea, how managers actually interact with their teams, their management style. It's clearly not a one-size-fits-all deal, is it?
Absolutely not. A management style is basically the way a manager works with and, importantly, involves their employees. Our sources highlight two main styles. First, there's authoritative management.
Okay, sounds strict.
It can be perceived that way. It's very directive, very controlling. The manager makes the big decisions and stays in close contact to make sure the work gets done right. Now, this isn't always bad. It's often most appropriate in a crisis.
Ah, like when time is critical.
Exactly. No time for group debate. You need quick, clear decisions. It's also useful when working with new or inexperienced employees who might need that close guidance to, get the hang of things. It's about providing structure and clarity.
Okay, and the other style?
The other is delegative management. This one is much more collaborative. It involves employees in making decisions. Managers using this style generally expect their teams to work well without constant supervision, and they actively ask for their input on important stuff.
That sounds more appealing, maybe.
For many, yes. It's really effective with experienced teams, people who already work well together, and when there's actually enough time to involve everyone. It builds autonomy, ownership.
So thinking as an employee, which style would you prefer from your supervisor? It's a good question, isn't it? And people probably have different answers depending on their own style.
They absolutely do. And it really underlines the fact that there's no single best way to manage. What's really crucial, and this is a key takeaway, is that the most effective managers rarely stick rigidly to just one style. They use what's often called mixed management. They adapt. They shift their approach based on how urgent the work is, how complex the task, and, importantly, how confident they are in their employees' skills and experience.
So flexibility is key.
Totally. Well, maybe in the past some managers felt that being authoritative was the only way to keep control. Modern thinking really emphasizes flexibility and situational awareness. That's what marks out a truly successful leader. You have to read the situation, read the team.
Right. So to help make these ideas really concrete, let's try a quick thought exercise. Imagine you're managing a team putting together a community event.
Okay.
Can you think of a situation that might pop up where an authoritative approach would probably be the best bet? Maybe, I don't know, a last-minute venue cancellation?
Yeah, exactly. Something needing immediate, decisive action. No time for a committee meeting.
And then think of another situation for that same event where a delegative approach would be much better. Perhaps brainstorming creative ideas for promoting the event with your experienced marketing volunteers.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
Let the team run with it, leverage their expertise. Thinking through scenarios like that really helps you see how these styles work in practice.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, really taken that deep dive. We started by sort of redefining management, moving way past just being the boss. Then we broke down those 5 core functions: planning, organizing, staffing, directing, controlling, and saw how they all work together. We explored the 3 levels of management, from supervisors like Ahmed facing those daily hurdles, to middle managers coordinating specific areas, right up to top execs setting the long-term vision.
A whole hierarchy.
Exactly. And finally, we unpacked those different management styles, seeing how the best managers are adaptable, switching their approach depending on the situation and the people involved.
It really drives home the point that management is, it's a dynamic skill. It's absolutely essential for any organization to succeed. Effective managers aren't just order givers. They're adaptable, they're insightful, they're capable of building productivity and positive team dynamics. They have to navigate everything from the nitty-gritty daily stuff to that big picture strategic thinking. It's a role that really demands constant learning and, honestly, a good deal of empathy.
Absolutely. So here's a final thought for you to mull over, building on everything we've discussed. Given what we've unpacked about the responsibilities, the complexities, handling tough conversations like Ahmed had to, or setting those huge long-term visions like an executive, if you were to step into a management role, maybe even tomorrow, what's one specific skill or perhaps one approach that you now realize would be most crucial for your success and why? Something to think about as you go about your day.